Straight up. Welcome to your Way Happy Bible Study. I'm Lisa Dennis Sparks, and you're watching Christians United Broadcasting Network. CUBN, where we want to see you be encouraged in Jesus' name. Okay, welcome back to your Way Happy Bible Study on CUBN. If I could get this thing to stay up. Okay. Wow. Okay. That's not really good, is it? Let me see if I can do it this way. Maybe I can get it to stand up there. Okay. Here we go. Welcome back to your Way Happy Bible Study on CUBN. Sorry, I'm at the beach. Forgive me. It's not like when we're on our regular CUBN set with our green screen technology and all that. So, I'm see the people walking by. I'm at the beach here. In case you're just tuning in, check it out. Look at the palm trees. I'm actually sitting in, see, aren't they cool? Beautiful. I'm actually sitting in my daughter and son-in-law's vehicle here and plugged in because, my computer is toast. Wreckage, huh? My computer's toast, and all I've got is my phone to broadcast with. And I don't have my concordance. I don't have everything that I have usually when I have my computer. So we were going to go through Daniel's equation. All right. And what you do with Daniel's equation is you take the 56 years or 8 weeks remaining of 360 days each. That's 20,160 days. And you add that to the event that restarts the clock, which is the Jews recapturing Jerusalem in 1967. We took the day in the middle, so there's 3 days error factor on either side, okay? So I figured June 7th, added the 20,160 days, and it came to August 17th, 2022. That would be the end of Daniel's prophetic generation, the end of the 70 weeks, and that would also be the end of, that would also be when the New Jerusalem descends. Then we back up by 45 days of restoration, and we find the end of the tribulation period at July 3rd, 2022. Remember, we've got an error factor of a few days on both ends. Then that would be the end of the 7 years. And then if you back up by 1,260 days, the whole second half, that would bring us to January 20th, 2019, for the temple to be defiled at our midpoint, And then the final blood moon of the series of 7 comes the very next day on January 21st, 2019. Now, the word says that the sun will go dark and the moon turn to blood before that great and terrible day of the Lord come. That would be the second half. So you've got these series of 7 blood moons that wrap up right there at January 21st, 2019. And Daniel's equation says that the second half starts the very day before that. And we've got an error factor of 2 or 3 days. So we could be on target here. Now, if the second half, if that's true, and the second half starts January 20th, where the temple would be defiled, and then the 7th blood moon of 7 showing up the very next day, then we would back up by 30 days, and that would be December 21st, 2018, and that would be the start of the Jews' 1,335 days, their final 1,335 days before we go into the millennium, and also when the sacrifices and oblations cease. And in verse 27 it says, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. Okay? And for the overspreading of abominations, there's an overspreading of abominations. They don't build the temple in the right place. They don't build it exactly like they're supposed to. The image of the beast is set up in the temple, and that defiles it. And this is it's so messed up. It's an overspreading of abominations, not just one. Okay, and the whole thing is an abomination. Now, if that's the case, and we have, let's recap a little bit. You might want to write all this down, where you have the very end of the generation would be August 17th, 2022. That's where the New Jerusalem would descend. And you back up by 45 days, which we find these numbers in Daniel 12. You can turn in your Bible over to Daniel 12. Now notice, Daniel 12:11 says, and from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Now you're looking at 1290 at December 21st, 2018, 1260 at January 20th, 2019. And then from there, we would back up to the nearest Feast of Trumpets to find the evacuation of the children and the Gentiles born with the temple inside them. So that would be September 10th or 11th, 2018. Then we would back up to the 6th blood moon out of the series of 7. That would be July 27th. That's where the possibility, the best possibility thus far is for the 6th seal to open. And then when the 6th seal opens, then grab your spot here in Revelation 12, and let's look and see what happens. Now, that would be where in verse 7, and there was war in heaven. So the 6th seal, let's look real quick at Revelation chapter 6 and starting at verse 12. Okay. And I beheld when he had opened the 6th seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake. So if July 27th is the 6th seal, this is what to expect, and this is how to verify it. Because on that exact day, you would have a great earthquake. And if you haven't noticed, they've been having several smaller quakes in Israel lately, centered around the Sea of Galilee area, around Tiberias. When I beheld when he had opened the 6th seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake. So there has to be either a quake that's global or that is in the Middle East, in the Holy Lands, there in Israel, a great earthquake on that exact day, the 27th, when that blood moon would arrive. Okay. So it says there's a great earthquake and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair. So on the side of the world, which would be over here where America is, on the side of the world where it would be daytime, the sun would have to go dark. Like when Jesus hung on the cross. You had the great earthquake and the sun turned dark for 3 hours. I don't know how long it would turn dark, but it says here, this is what to expect if July 27th is the opening of the sixth seal, like it very well could be. It's a possibility. Maybe it won't, but maybe it will. We'll just have to watch and see. But there are indicators, excuse me, indicators with this seal that show us, that can verify if it has opened or not. Because if it does open, you're looking at a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. So the blood moon appears over Israel. That means the sun would be over America, Canada, the West. And if there's a great earthquake and if the sun goes dark in the West during the daytime, and I know it sounds impossible, doesn't it? But what I'm saying is, if this is the sixth seal on July 27th, if it is, it might not be, okay? If it is, then you're going to have on that exact day a great earthquake and the sun going dark here in America, and the moon, blood moon, appearing over Israel. And we know, according to NASA's charts, that's when the blood moon comes. And it says in verse 13, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs, when she is shaken of a mighty wind. This is when Satan and his 1/3 are cast down. The stars of heaven falling unto the earth. And wow, I can feel that I'm getting sick. Dang. I don't want to get sick. I don't have time to be sick. Now it says here, the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she's shaken as of a mighty wind. So this would be when Satan and his 1/3 are cast down. And we have another reference to that in Revelation 12:7. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels. This is Revelation 12:7-8. And prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. So they can't hang out in heaven any further. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, goodness, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Now, if this is the sixth seal coming up on the 27th of July, if, it's not a when, okay? We don't know yet if this is going to be it. We have to wait and see. Is there a great earthquake, and does the sun go dark during the day when the blood moon appears over Israel? Man, my throat's starting to hurt. Okay. Let's see. If those six seal signs appear, then after that you would see war in heaven. There would be conflict in space above our planet. And that may shed a little bit of light on why President Trump has created a sixth military force for space. He wants our military in space to defend us. And the man is into saving money, so not spending it. Okay. So for him to put the ginormous resources into a military force for space that would be required for such an endeavor, that tells you a lot. It tells you that the powers that be out there, the world leaders, perceive a threat in space. And it's not just satellites they fear. It's not just other nations. They're fearing something else that they can see out there. And they're not telling us about it. But for him to say he wants an immediate military force in space, that tells you he believes the threat is also imminent. It's possible. So then in verse 14 of Revelation 6, and the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. That's probably the arrival of the king in the air. And then you have verse 15. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every freeman, that's everybody, hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains. Now, don't you think it's interesting that after a great earthquake, that is the very last place you want to be, is underground? Okay? So every bondman and every freeman hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. So they see his face. They can see him sitting on his throne, and they're hiding from him. Now, why would they hide from him? Well, there's a ton of reasons, but the evacuation of the children and the Gentiles has taken place between verses 14 and 15 in Revelation chapter 6. So you're looking at heaven departing as a scroll when it's rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. Whoa. Then you have everybody's hiding underground, and they're hiding from Jesus. Notice in verse 16, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us. How scared do you have to be to beg a mountain to fall on you and crush you to death? That's what I wonder. Fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. So you have a situation here where people are hiding in the dens and the rocks of the mountains. They're hiding underground from Jesus. And then in verse 17, for the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Now, God never pours his wrath out on his own. So the evacuation has to have already occurred. And I know there are those out there who are saying that the sixth seal events come at the very end of the tribulation period, but that's impossible. It's impossible in many ways. But you study for yourself and decide for yourself. But right here it says in verse 17, for the great day of his wrath is come, and that's the second half. And who shall be able to stand? The Jews are the only ones left here to stand. They will die rather than take the mark. No child of God is going to take the mark. Not a single one. So the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? You've got 7 trumpet judgments and 7 vial judgments that are wrath. The trumpet judgments are devastating. The vile judgments are worse. Wreakage. Okay? So, now we go back over to Daniel 9. And we've wrapped up chapter 9. And we're going to go into chapter 10 now of Daniel. And so we're going to regress a bit here. In the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, now he's the one that gave the decree to Nehemiah and Ezra to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the wall in the city. In the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a thing was revealed unto Daniel, whose name was called Belteshazzar. Remember in our study? Nebuchadnezzar's son was Belshazzar, but Daniel was called Belteshazzar. Okay? Belteshazzar. So, a thing was revealed unto Daniel, whose name was called Belteshazzar, and the thing was true. But the time appointed was long, and he understood the thing and had understanding of the vision. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks. Now you're gonna find out some things that I already told you in this chapter. So in those days, I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks. I ate no pleasant bread, neither came flesh nor wine in my mouth. Neither did I anoint myself at all. He didn't take a bath, take a shower, till 3 whole weeks were fulfilled. So he has prayed and fasted for 3 weeks. And in the 24th day of the 1st month, as I was by the side of the great river, which is Hiddekel, then I lifted up mine eyes, and I looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with fine gold of Uphaz. His body also was like the beryl, and his face as the appearance of lightning, and his eyes as lamps of fire, and his arms and his feet like in color to polished brass, and the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude. So, check out this description of Gabriel. This is interesting, isn't it? So if you look back in verse 5, he's got a human appearance. He looks like a man. He's clothed in linen, white linen. His loins are girded with fine gold of Uphaz. So he's got some kind of a golden girdle around his waist that hangs down to his thighs. His body also was like the beryl, Beryl. That's a stone, a precious stone. So his body has he doesn't look like flesh. He glows. He kind of it says his body also was like the beryl, and his face as the appearance of lightning. So he shines, he glows, and his eyes as lamps of fire. So he's got fiery eyes. That sounds a little scary, doesn't it? And his arms and his feet like in color to polished brass. So he glows, he's shining. And the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision. For the men that were with me saw not the vision. So he's saying that he saw the vision and those that were with him didn't see it. But a great quaking fell upon them, so that they fled to hide themselves. Therefore I was left alone and saw this great vision, and there remained no strength in me. For my comeliness was turned in me into corruption, and I retained no strength. So, see, keep in mind, Daniel has not eaten, um, he hasn't eaten or drank any. He's probably had water because you can't make it for 3 weeks without water. But he hasn't eaten any meat. He hasn't sat down and had a, tasty meal. He's probably had some water, maybe a little bread for 3 weeks, and he's praying, right? So then this heavenly vision comes to him. He calls it a vision. And he says he retained no strength. In verse 9 of Daniel chapter 10, yet heard I the voice of his words. And when I heard the voice of his words, then was I in a deep sleep on my face. So he's laying down on his face, and my face toward the ground. He's like face down on the ground. And behold, an hand touched me, which set me upon my knees and upon the palms of my hands. So when Gabriel touches him, it gives him enough strength to rise up onto his knees and onto the palms of his hands. In verse 11, and he said unto me, O Daniel, a man greatly beloved, understand the words I speak unto thee, and stand upright, for unto thee am I now sent. When he had spoken this word unto me, I stood trembling. He's shaking all over. In verse 12 of Daniel chapter 10, then said he unto me, fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that thou didst set thine heart to understand, and to chasten thyself before thy God, thy words were heard. Did you hear that? He says, from the first day that you set your heart to understand and to chasten yourself before God, your words were heard the first day. Okay? And I am come for thy words. He's saying, I'm here with coming, I've come with your answer. And I am come for thy words. But what's important here is that he's saying that from the first day you asked God, he sent you an answer. He didn't have to pray for 3 weeks. Okay? From the first day that he set himself to learn, God sent the reply. From the first day he asked, God sent the reply. So while Daniel's praying 3 weeks, he thinks that he's trying, I don't know, maybe he thinks he's trying to convince God to give him an answer. But God sent it the very first day. But we're going to take a real